Welcome back to our inspirational talks, shooting stars we promised you, and that's exactly what we're going to get right now. And this is an amazing fact for you. We are still around about 500 people on this call, in this event. So that means that so many of you are sitting there at your desks watching this and being as involved as you can using Ysembly, using Platts. So thank you so much for being engaged, because as we've heard so often, this is about community, this is about connections, and we need everyone in this together. So now we're on to our shooting stars. These shooting stars are inspirational talkers that you will also have the opportunity of talking to and with in MS Teams rooms. Yoo-hoo! So no longer just streaming, you will actually be part of the conversation, the way we all love it in MS Teams rooms. These rooms are going to give you a first-hand knowledge of experience that's going to be very, very useful for your focus areas. So do join those. I'll give you some more information on how you get into those MS Teams rooms. How are we doing this? We're going to invite everybody to hear 5-minute teasers by every shooting star, by every inspirational talker. And then you will have the opportunity and the challenge to choose one of those and then go and spend the final hour of the day with that person in an MS Teams room. So I think without any further ado, let me introduce our first speaker. Our first speaker, shooting star, is Lisa Witter. She's CEO at Apolitical Foundation, and she's co-founder of Apolitical in the US. Apolitical is co-created and funded by governments and builds the knowledge, skills and competencies and connections people working in public services need. So this is really drawing on a lot of the discussions we've had so far in enabling that competence development. So over to Lisa for her teaser.
Hi there, I'm Lisa Witter, the co-founder of Apolitical. We're a global learning network and platform that's obsessed about helping public servants get the skills they need for the 21st century. Really excited to be with you here at the GIZ Future Forum to bring you this workshop. So my workshop title is What Skills for the 21st Century Public Servants and Meatloaf Have in Common? So it's a question. It's going to be an interactive, sort of fast-paced, a practical workshop that helps you think sort of about big things, but also examine yourself and where you fit into these skill sets that we need for 21st century governance and to serve the citizens the most. So I'm going to give you a quick run of show. Apolitical has more than 140,000 members from 170 countries. So we have a lot of data. We run a lot of polls and surveys on what public servants want and need. So I'm going to share with you some of the highlight ones for you to reflect upon with some polling questions that I will give back to you to see how this cohort at the Future Forum compares to other cohorts who have answered this question. Then I'm going to do a bit of a deep dive. It's the only really talky part, but I want to make it fun and case study driven about what those 21st century skills are. We took this from examining frameworks of public servants across the world. So either learning frameworks or competencies. And there are 8 that came out. One is, won't surprise you, adaptable. The thing we know about the future is that we don't know, right? So the adaptability, being experimental or agile, there's different words to talk about this. Curiosity, being proactive, being persuasive, being cooperative / collaborative, data literacy in the broadest sense about what it is, how to use it, and how to share it and who owns it, all of this. And then reflective, which is my favorite one, is really sort of, that's why you're here, right? To reflect on your skills and to reflect on your work. The next section I'm calling All About You. We have a quick little assessment tool that you're going to take live that tells you what kind of public servant are you. I'll share the link so you can go and share it with your team if you wanted to afterwards. And there are basically 4 archetypes that we talk about. Are you the innovator like Steve Jobs? Or are you the policy wonk like Albert Einstein? Maybe you're the unsung hero or you're a director. So this is just a quick, fast assessment tool to get us thinking about, oh, what are the categories that I'm in? What I find interesting about this tool is, imagine if you have a team of people who are all Steve Jobs or all Einsteins, the policy wonks. It doesn't work. So it's not just about 21st century skills and yourself, but you need to have diversity in every sense in teams to be effective at serving the citizens. Then we're going to talk about the meatloaf. So I don't want to tell you too much. I want to tease you with the meatloaf, but what I will say is it has something to do with adult learning, unlearning, and sort of questioning why you do the things you do. What are habits? What makes sense? What don't? And I'm going to put you into small groups where you're going to talk about your insights on the assessment, and then go deep into what your meatloaf is and come out with a little plan about how you're going to understand that or address that. Finally, I'm going to leave you all with a deeper tool if you wanted to assess yourself against those 8 skills that I talked about. And then we'll wrap up. So again, super interactive, fast. I'm from New York, although I live in Berlin. I'll try to be slow in talking, but it's meant to be pacey and very, very, very for you and with you. So very much looking forward to this. I hope to see you in a few minutes. Take care. See you soon.
Thanks so much. Wow. And I'm so pleased now I know what the meatloaf is. I was really picturing, I would do anything for love. But now I understand the meatloaf. All right. So that's your first option. And thank you so much, Lisa, for telling us in that amazingly dynamic way what you're going to do with people who go into your room in just a few minutes. Now, our second guest, our second shooting star is Emily Pryor. Emily is the Executive Director at Data2X. It's a United Nations foundation, and she's with us live today from the US. And I think this is something that we have had a lot of talk about today, the gender divide, the gender gap, and the huge challenge for digital transformation is that women and girls, there's just no data on them. So it's going to be very, very interesting understanding the partnerships that the UN agencies, but also with all the other actors in the multi-stakeholderism, how you're working to change that problem. Emily, over to you. 5 minutes teaser.
Great. Thank you so much. It's my pleasure and honor to be speaking with all of you today. As our presenter said, my name is Emily Courey Pryor, and I'm Executive Director of Data2X. We're a civil society organization and gender data alliance that works every day to build the case and mobilize action for gender data through research, advocacy, communications, and innovative partnerships. I want to extend my thanks to the government of Germany and in particular to the wonderful team at GIZ for this opportunity. It feels fitting, honestly, to be talking about gender data at an event called the Future Forum, as so much of gender data is about realizing a future where the experiences, challenges, and contributions of every individual, no matter who they are or where they live or their gender, are understood and valued and counted. The Sustainable Development Goals, as our most ambitious vision for the future yet, and gender data are essential to realizing that framework. But gender data is also about the present. And I hope if you leave with anything today, it will be with the sense that what we do now matters more than ever. Because there is a lot to do, and each of us has a part to play along every step of what Data2X calls the gender data value chain. That's the virtuous cycle of data from production to analysis to use to impact. And it's clear that we need to be producing and using gender data more than ever. But first, it sounds like there's been some conversation about data and disaggregated data earlier in the forum, and I heard some of it early this morning for me, morning time for me. So what does gender data mean? What am I talking about? At a minimum, it encompasses data disaggregated by sex. For example, how many women or men own mobile phones? A simple question without a simple answer currently. But gender data is not the same as sex disaggregated data. It's not only sex disaggregated data. It can and should go beyond sex disaggregation to reflect gender identity. That also means that data reflects gender roles and inequities. Gender data collection should also account for stereotypes and embedded gender biases. So that's a lot of words about disaggregation and bias, but what do I mean practically? So one example is that in most countries, men and women spend their time differently. These differences are driven by gender roles and norms of public participation, care, and domestic responsibilities. However, deep-seated biases in data meant that before definitions of work and what comprised work were expanded in 2013 to account for unpaid activities, much of women's time was just invisible. And the message you could take from that data was that women were unproductive in the economy. However, they were not unproductive. They were spending their time in different ways, all of which had an important economic and social value. It just wasn't being shown by the data. And so the presence of gender data, or its absence, makes a statement about what is valued in our governments, in our society, and across our shared global goals. I don't need to tell you that the last 18 months have been remarkable. In every country, the COVID-19 pandemic has tested our systems, our empathy, and our resolve. When the pandemic first emerged, initial media coverage here in the US kept describing COVID as the great equalizer. We now know that those stories could not be more wrong. As we started hearing from workers who are paid hourly and had no choice but to get on crowded buses and trains to get to work, as we heard from moms who were struggling to balance work and childcare and all the essential tasks that keep a home and family running, as we heard from communities that systemically face racial and other forms of discrimination, we understood that COVID-19 had not leveled the playing field at all. Instead, it had only exploded existing fissures of inequity into full-scale fractures. And it was the data, both qualitative and quantitative, that told us what our intuition and assumptions could not. And yet, even with our recognition of the disproportionate effects of the pandemic, we are still, I'm sorry to say, falling short on gender data. Global Health 50/50, along with ICRW and the African Population and Health Research Center, produced a sex-disaggregated COVID-19 tracker for 199 countries worldwide. As of July, only half of countries provided this data, sex-disaggregated data, for cases and/or deaths. And despite rising COVID cases, the number of countries reporting sex-disaggregated data has been declining since August of 2020. COVID-19 is not the only area where we need much more data than we are using or reporting to respond to the lived realities of communities more effectively and more compassionately. In just 1 month, G20 countries will gather in Italy to stimulate what they are calling a she-covery, an economic recovery that centers the needs of women and girls. But as we talked about earlier, so much of the information we have leaves women and girls out. So if we want to have a she-covery, we have to better understand how women and girls spend their time. That means understanding what income-generating activities they're engaged in, but also what kinds of unpaid work might be their responsibility. And yet, right now, only 85 countries can report data on time spent doing unpaid work. Part of the problem is that we need more funding for gender data. Data2X and Open Data Watch estimated in our State of Gender Data Financing report that we face a gender data funding gap of $450 million per year. And when it comes to the SDGs, most countries don't have enough data to monitor their progress. As you probably know, there are 53 gender-specific indicators across the goals, but more than 3/4 of the data on these indicators is over 10 years old. So how can policymakers craft smarter policies if the data is too old to be relevant, or if it's so infrequently collected that it's impossible to understand trends over time? I know this is supposed to be an inspiring talk, and I feel like all I'm doing is posing daunting questions to you all. But there is a way forward. Earlier this year, the Generation Equality Forum, in which the government of Germany also took part and made commitments, this forum mobilized unprecedented momentum around gender equality, generating 1,100 commitments and $40 billion from government, civil society, donors, and private companies. At the methodological level, digital data is helping us understand everything from online harassment to the differential mobility of women and men in Santiago, Chile. And though issues of privacy and security must be addressed, data collaboratives between public and private sector actors are a promising model of collaboration to generate policy-relevant data. So maybe those early journalists were wrong about COVID, but the COVID-19 pandemic has emphasized more than ever that health, the economy, the environment are all connected, that we are all connected. And understanding those connection points and where there's room for improvements that can benefit all of us of all genders are best illuminated through gender data.
Thank you so much. Emily, I'm going to have to just break you there because we've come to the end of your teaser time, and I'm sure that a lot of people are really, really excited in working on these questions with you today. And it's going to be another really, really exciting discussion, particularly because this question of the gender gap, not just as a sort of data problem, but as a more deep-seated problem, is something that we've been discussing so much. And if we can come up with solutions with you today, it's going to be fantastic. Thank you so much. And let's move to our third teaser so that you all know who you can talk to today. Thanks, Emily. Our third teaser talk, our third inspirational shooting star is Angela Odua-Lungati. She's Executive Director at Ushahidi, which was mentioned this morning by Ingrid Holfen. And Ushahidi is a global not-for-profit tech company that monitors, maps and mobilizes communities with their technology solutions. And Ushahidi empowers community to build this better world, basically. But it's exactly as we've been saying, let's go local, let's see what the context is and involve the actors. So let's have a look at the teaser.
Thank you for having me today. My name is Angela Odua-Lungati, based out of Nairobi, Kenya. I am a technologist, community builder, and open source software advocate who is passionate about building and using appropriate technology tools to impact the lives of marginalized groups. I currently serve as the Executive Director at Ushahidi. This global nonprofit technology company builds integrated tools and services to empower people to generate solutions and mobilize communities for good. Our flagship product, the Ushahidi platform, is used by communities to rapidly gather, analyze, and act on data to strengthen communities and help people thrive. I want to start with a brief illustration that will describe what inclusive digital democracy means to me. I usually use this analogy of a farm borrowed from my Ushahidi colleagues at the end of my presentations, but today it'll drive my point home better at the start. Digital platforms like Ushahidi are like fertile land. They represent the potential for greater participation, improved decision-making, and trust. The data and information we gather via these platforms are like having good seeds. Seeds that hold promise to flourish and yield good produce if appropriately handled. But without farmers to till, your fertile land and good seeds are useless. The farm will not flourish without people and the hard work into getting produce in that land. Usually, ordinary citizens better understand the issues they are dealing with. They know the context, they know the tensions. To have effective democratic societies, we need solutions that tap into the wisdom of these local people. Wisdom that is often ignored because we feel that people are too simple or are not educated in the conventional sense. In this information age, ordinary citizens should no longer be considered passive recipients of information, but active participants instead. Technology can facilitate this engagement with marginalized groups by meeting these audiences where they are. At Ushahidi, we've been very intentional about fostering inclusiveness in how we build and design our tools. Our goal is to empower communities to thrive as a result of access to data and technology. This is how we've gone about achieving this goal. First and foremost, our platform is free and open source, reducing the burden of cost and making the platform accessible to all regardless of their financial ability. Second, we innovate around the tools people already have access to, that is the mobile phone. Third, we make the platform available in multiple languages, allowing people to interact with data in languages they are familiar with. We made these decisions with our users in mind, leading to wide-scale use of the platform. As a result, Ushahidi has been used in over 160 countries in the last 13 years, more than 200,000 times. In addition, the platform has gathered over 50 million reports to advance democracy, report incidents, mobilize crisis response, simplify research, encourage activism, address challenges, influence change, and improve society. We've been monitoring elections since inception of Ushahidi. The platform has been used to monitor elections in India, Zambia, Mozambique, Nigeria, the USA, and many other countries. Our strategy has evolved from being reactionary to proactively engaging with ordinary people and stakeholders to help foster transparency and accountability in elections worldwide. In Kenya, we've run a project dubbed Uchaguzi to monitor general elections since 2008, helping citizens protect their votes using a three-part strategy. One, mobilizing ordinary citizens to share information on irregular electoral malpractices. Two, liaising with responders on the ground to make sure we're receiving credible information. Three, closing the feedback loop to ensure that action is taken if need be. Each time, we've collected thousands of reports from citizens countrywide, and in some cases, facilitated resource mobilization to deal with security incidents. Since the widespread proliferation of mobile phone technologies across the African continent in the year 2000s, technology has become essential for improving the feedback loop between citizens and the governments. Mobile technologies have been used to enhance the delivery of public services. However, COVID-19 has further exacerbated existing inequalities, with lockdowns and restrictions creating disruptions and a significant reduction in economic power, threatening to unravel years of international development progress, given the disastrous impact it has had on the global economy. The reality is that people in areas of low connectivity struggle with access, coupled with the fact that the cost of internet connectivity is still high for these low-income communities. For example, many Kenyans will own smartphones but will not afford to buy internet bundles to connect. This presents a significant challenge in bridging the digital divide. People are also largely unaware of the risks of using digital tools and sharing their data via these tools, and various bad actors are using this to their advantage. I've barely scratched the surface with the gaps that exist in achieving true inclusive democracy, and I'm sure we'll get to dive in deeper in our breakout sessions. As a parting shot, we can do a few things to start to solve the problems I mentioned above. One, embrace the use of open systems and focus our attention on reducing barriers to access. Many projects like BRIC are working on last mile connectivity in the global south, providing free Wi-Fi in low-income areas. Two, take data protection further beyond regulation and educate people about their digital privacy rights, empowering them to become a part of enforcing adherence by their duty bearers. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you so much, Angela. And I'm sure that there are going to be many people who are going to be wanting to go into your group as well. This is exactly some of the topics we've been talking about. Ordinary people understand better. It's just that no one trusts them or asks them, and also just being inclusive, free, building on what we have in this multilingual and empowering environment. I think this is exactly what people need to talk to you about. So that's your third option. And your final option is with Martin Kevats. He's National Digital Advisor for the government of Estonia. And Estonia is, well, it's been named the most advanced digital society in the world by Wired. It's built an efficient, secure and transparent ecosystem where 99% of all government services are online. So, Martin, your 5 minutes are starting now, and you're walking through the forest, I believe, as you talk to us. How wonderful.
Yeah, hello, everybody from an autumny forest here in Estonia. And those who are working in the public sector, how many times when you feel that you have some kind of an idea to do something, and then you go to the computer and for no particular reason, the computer says no. Well, then you go to the IT department and go and ask it. And then the IT guys say, no, you should talk to the lawyers. And then you go to see the lawyers and then they say no. This is so very common in the public sector that when deploying government digital services, then there are all these kind of hurdles. And last but not least, there is procurement. Any normal person who would hear the word procurement, his or her hair would start shaking and feel kind of strange. Well, this is a very slight and short intro to a joint project we are doing together with GIZ, DIAL and ITU to start solving these problems actually. Actually, just a couple of weeks ago, we had the honor of physically meeting here in Estonia with the project team of GovStack. And these are the problems we aim to solve. But the GovStack is basic or an approach how to deliver government services in a reusable and shared way via the concept of building blocks. Resource settings or in emerging economies, then many of these countries struggle to actually deploy efficient or private or transparent mechanisms for governance. They are stuck in legacy technologies, and many times there are vendor locks. So the way we see, together with our good friends David Rose, Sarah Fisher, Christian Melin from GIZ, is to solve it by opening up the specs for these building blocks, sharing them openly across the planet, building these bits and pieces that would be able to shared and utilized across different governments and municipalities. An easy example from Estonia would be that, like, since 2001, we've had a secure digital identity. This digital identity saves us about 2% of GDP annually. And because we are a part of NATO, we can have an army because we spend that 2% of GDP to have a defense force. But how come many of these things have not been deployed in many other countries? There are many hurdles and many obstacles, but the biggest hurdle is between our ears. Digital development and digital transformation actually has got very little to do with technology. It's mostly about building a mindset and culture that is ready to adopt and change procedures. We are living in an age where stuff is changing faster than our systems potentially can. But we need to build our own governance mechanisms to adopt that. A few weeks ago, we had the Tallinn Digital Summit. We were talking about the ethical financing of global infrastructure projects, and we launched a concept called trusted connectivity. The idea that all of these things should be transparent and based on digital public infrastructure that is open, shared as digital public goods. I think together with our friends in GIZ, in ITU and DIAL, we are embarking on a journey to build one really relevant piece of global governance architecture, which aims to build these tools so that many of those low resource settings and countries can leapfrog and build their own systems more easily. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. That was absolutely on the dot, 5 minutes. Brilliant. And this is, again, another topic that has been hotly discussed today, opening up and sharing, changing that mindset. This is cultural change we're talking about, and it's going to be great to understand the Estonian model. We thought we were going to lose you there right in the middle, but then you came back, and wonderful to see that you can do government by walking through a forest. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, those are your options for the final hour of today's Future Forum session. So what do you do now? What we're going to do is just show you on the Platts app. It's quite easy to see, but if you go over onto the agenda side of the app, which is on the left-hand side, then you can see the agenda. So click on the agenda, you can see it now, Sabrina's showing us, and go right down to the bottom and you'll see the last thing on the agenda today are the inspirational talks. And there you can see Lisa, Emily, Angela and Martin. And each of those talks will be moderated. So even if you're quite a big group and there are lots of you out there, you should still have a really invigorating discussion. And we wish you all the best. It's going to be a tough choice to make, though. So please make your choice in just a moment. But this is actually the spot and time where we have to say goodbye for today from the studio, because this is the last time we'll see you until Thursday morning. And by that time, you'll have traveled far and beyond our galaxy. You'll be bringing home ideas, thoughts, maybe challenges. Maybe it's been pretty uncomfortable on your journey. We hope so. But we hope most of all that you've got some great connections and can bring those back and use those in moving forward. So let's work together to shape this digital transformation and understand context and engage with those who are actually the actors of the digital transformation that we're talking about. See you on Thursday. Now make your choice on Platts and have a great conversation.